I just want to understand. What exactly is wrong with me?
Nothing is wrong with you, my dear. You are simply not what we had in mind. Oh. Not what you had in mind. I have known your son for 4 years. 4 years is not a marriage. David needs someone who represents this family correctly. Someone more suitable.
Say something, David. Look at me and say something.
I'm sorry, Grace. I never wanted this.
Grace.
My mother is just saying what is best for everyone.
Everyone. Not me.
You are a fine girl, but fine is not enough for what we are building here. You understand that, don't you?
I understand everything now. Every single thing.
Grace Dime, wait. We can talk about this, Granny.
There is nothing left to talk about, David. You already said everything. With your silence.
Grace, please, wait, don't go.
The night Grace walked out of that sitting room, nobody chased her. She had counted on David's footsteps behind her. She had counted on his voice calling her name down the staircase, breaking through the thick Lagos air, giving her one reason to stop. She had stood at the bottom of those stairs for 11 seconds. She counted those too. 11 seconds of silence from the man who had told her 3 months earlier that she was the only woman he had ever been certain about. He never came. She sat in her car for a long time with the engine off. The street outside was alive, a generator humming 2 houses down, the sound of a television through someone's open window, a security man whistling softly at the gate. The whole world continuing as if something enormous had not just been quietly destroyed inside that house. She pressed her hands flat against her thighs and breathed until the shaking stopped. Then she turned the key and drove away from everything she had spent 4 years building toward. Margaret had not raised her voice once. That was the part Grace would remember longest. The older woman had delivered her verdict the way a magistrate reads a sentence, calmly, clearly, with the total confidence of someone who had never once been told that they were wrong. You are simply not what we had in mind. Not cruel enough to argue with, not kind enough to survive. Grace knew what Margaret meant. She had always known, in the way women know things that nobody says out loud. She was too dark, too full, too much of herself in a world that kept asking women like her to be less. She had walked into that family with her whole chest open, and they had looked at everything she was and decided it was not the right shape for their living room. She did not cry that night. She sat on the floor of her apartment in Lekki and she made a list. Not of everything she had lost, of everything she still had. Her savings, her skill, her name, her mind, and one idea she had been carrying for 2 years, like a seed she had never found the right soil for. She called it ENUF. It began in her spare bedroom. Grace had always loved beauty. Not the narrow, punishing version that magazine covers sold, but the real kind. The kind that lived in the way a woman carried herself when nobody was watching. The kind that had nothing to do with what she looked like and everything to do with what she knew about herself. She had studied cosmetics formulation for 2 years through an online program she paid for herself, quietly, the way she did most things that mattered to her. David had never asked what she was studying. Margaret would not have cared. She started with a skincare line, 7 products, all of them developed for deep melanin skin, for women whose complexions the mainstream industry either ignored or tried to fix. She tested every formula on herself. She photographed herself honestly. No filters, no lighting tricks, no angles designed to make her look like someone else. She posted the photographs with one sentence underneath each one. This is enough. The first month, she had 40 followers, mostly friends, a few strangers. She sold 11 units. She reinvested every naira. She worked her day job as an events coordinator and came home to her spare bedroom every night. She slept 4 hours some nights, 5 on good ones. She learned packaging, she learned logistics, she learned how to speak to a camera without apology, how to talk about her own face and her own skin without flinching, how to say, "I am enough," so many times that it stopped feeling like a declaration and started feeling like the simplest truth in the world. Her loyal friend Sandra, the one person who had sat with her the night of the engagement party and said nothing because there was nothing useful to say, just stayed. Sandra became her first model. Then Sandra's cousin. Then women who found the page and sent messages that said things like, "I have been waiting for something like this my whole life," and "I showed my daughter and she cried." At 6 months, ENUF had 12,000 followers. At 1 year, 38,000. At 18 months, a beauty distributor in Abuja reached out. Then one in Port Harcourt. Then a conversation with a Lagos fashion house about a collaboration that would have seemed impossible to the woman sitting on the floor of her Lekki apartment making a list of what she still had. Grace said yes to all of it. She said yes the way she had learned to say no, clearly and without apology. She did not think about David every day. That was the truth she did not say out loud for a long time because it felt like it should not be true. He had been 4 years of her life. He had been the person she told things to at night, the person she had imagined a future with, the person she had believed was different. The grief of him was real, and she did not rush it out the door. She let it move through her at its own pace, the way a long rain eventually stops. What stayed longer than the grief was the memory of his silence, 11 seconds at the bottom of those stairs. That silence had taught her something she could not have learned any other way, that some people love you only up to the point where love costs them something. And David's love stopped exactly at the edge of his mother's approval. She did not hate him for it. She understood it. But understanding something and forgiving it were two different countries, and she was in no hurry to cross the border. What she did instead of hating him was work. She worked with the kind of focus that comes from having nothing left to protect except the thing you are building. ENUF became her whole language. Every product she formulated, every photograph she took, every caption she wrote was a quiet answer to everything Margaret had said in that sitting room. You are not what we had in mind. Good, Grace thought, because I was never building this for your mind. 2 years and 7 months after the engagement party, Grace received a call from a venue coordinator she had worked with during her event days. The Meridian Hall in Victoria Island was available for a 3-day booking in November. They wanted ENUF's product launch. They had been following the brand and believed the space could hold what the event deserved. The hall seated 400. It had a runway. It had light rigs that could make a room feel like dawn. Grace booked it the same afternoon. She did not know when she signed the papers that the Meridian Hall was where her wedding reception had been planned. She found out 3 weeks later, going through old emails looking for a vendor contact. She sat with that information for a long time. Then she laughed. The real kind, the kind that comes from somewhere deep and surprised. Life had a particular sense of poetry when it wanted to make a point. She kept the booking. She did not change a single thing. The launch was everything. 400 people filled the Meridian Hall on a Friday evening in November. The air smelled of the signature ENUF fragrance, warm, deep, unhurried. The runway was lined with women of every shade and size and age, all of them wearing ENUF products, all of them photographed exactly as they were. No corrections, no adjustments. The campaign slogan glowed on a screen the full width of the stage. You were always enough. You just needed someone to stop lying to you. Grace wore a deep burgundy gown, not because she planned the symbolism, because it was the color she had always loved, and she was done dressing herself for other people's comfort. Journalists were there, distributors were there, the fashion house partners were there. Women who had found ENUF in their darkest months were there, some of them with their daughters, some of them alone and radiant in a way that needed no explanation. Sandra stood at the back of the room and cried quietly for most of the opening speech. She had been there for all of it. The floor, the spare bedroom, the 40 followers, the 11 units. She knew what this room had cost. She knew exactly what had been traded for it. Grace was moving between guests an hour into the event when she saw David. He was standing near the entrance, slightly apart from the crowd, holding a glass of water he had not drunk. He was wearing a dark suit. He looked exactly like himself and also like someone time had moved through without leaving anything interesting behind. He saw her at the same moment she saw him. She did not stop walking. She finished the conversation she was in, thanked the distributor she had been speaking with, and then crossed the room toward him because leaving him standing there uncertain was not something she was willing to do. She had not built all of this to be afraid of a man in a doorway. He said her name the way people say the name of something they have lost and found and are not sure they have the right to touch. She said, "David, I didn't know you were coming." He said, "I heard about it everywhere. I had to see," and then he stopped, because whatever he had come to say seemed to dissolve when he was actually standing in front of her, in front of all of it. She waited. She had learned patience the hard way, and she wore it easily now. He looked around the room, at the runway, at the women, at the screen behind the stage still glowing with "You are always enough." He looked at all of it and then looked back at her, and something moved across his face that she recognized. Not guilt exactly, but the specific pain of understanding too late what something was worth. He said, "Grace, I am..."
She said, "You don't have to." He said, "I need you to know that She said, "David." And her voice was the gentlest it had been all evening, which somehow made it the most final. "I built this, not for you to see, not for your mother to understand, not for anyone who needed me to be different. I built this because I was always enough, and I needed to prove it to myself." She paused. "I don't need you to confirm that. I established it a long time ago." He nodded. His jaw was tight. His eyes were doing something she chose not to read too carefully. She said, "Enjoy the event." And she meant it, not as a wound, as a full stop. Then she turned and walked back into the center of everything she had made, and the room opened for her the way rooms open for women who have stopped asking for permission. Margaret heard about the launch 2 days later from 3 different people. She sat with her phone for a long time looking at photographs from the evening. Grace on the runway, Grace in the burgundy gown, Grace laughing with her head back and her whole self unguarded in a room full of people who had come specifically to celebrate what she had built. Margaret had spent years deciding what kind of woman was suitable for her son. She looked at those photographs and understood slowly, and without anyone to blame but herself, that suitability had nothing to do with it. Grace had not needed to be suitable. Grace had needed to be free. David did not call anyone that night. He sat in his apartment and thought about 11 seconds. He did not know that Grace had counted them, but he had felt them too. That pause at the top of the staircase when he had known exactly what the right thing was and had chosen his mother's silence instead. He thought about that choice the way you think about a door you watched close and never found the handle to again. There was no dramatic collapse, no public unraveling, just two people in a house that had made a decision and were now living inside the full weight of it. That was its own kind of consequence. Quiet, permanent. Every morning they woke up to the life they had chosen over her. Grace flew to London 6 weeks after the launch to meet with a retail partner who wanted to carry ENUF in 14 stores across the UK. She sat in the window seat of the plane and watched Lagos shrink below her, the chaos and the colour and the noise of it, the city that had held every version of her, the floor of her apartment, the spare bedroom, the 40 followers, the burgundy dress at the bottom of somebody's staircase. She did not feel like she was leaving any of it behind. She felt like she was carrying all of it forward. She opened her notebook and wrote one line at the top of a fresh page. Not a plan, not a target, just a truth she had earned slowly and completely and would never again let anyone take from her. I was always the right woman. They was simply the wrong room. She closed her notebook. She looked out at the sky and she smiled. Not for anyone watching, not for a camera, not for a caption, just for herself, which was, as it had always been, entirely enough.
People started commenting. She had the chance to take him back at that lunch. Some people say she should have forgiven him. Others say she did the right thing, walking away and never looking back. What do you think? Was Grace too hard on David? Or did he deserve every second of that silence? If this story touched you, please like and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs it today. And drop a comment. We want to hear from you. God bless you.